So this talk tonight will be part of a series that I've been doing on the Eightfold Path. And for those of you who were here the last time I talked, the topic will be familiar because I went back and listened to the talk that I gave last time. And I thought it was a little confusing. I thought I actually didn't really focus on the pieces that felt the most important and that my thinking wasn't quite clear enough on it. So I decided to do it again. But having had, 4 to 6 weeks to think about it and do some more research, I think it will be hardly recognizable. So you're going to get a fresh talk on a familiar topic. So tonight's talk will be on the topic of right intention, sometimes translated as right thought, which is the second factor in the Eightfold Path. But before I dive in, back up for a second, just go over the Eightfold Path as a whole, for those of you who might appreciate a refresher. So the Eightfold Path is the Buddha's how-to manual. It is how to cultivate a mind at peace. And the factors are sequential, but they are also interrelated. My go-to metaphor is like a steamer, one of those steamers that collapses that has the interlaced flaps on them. So it's like that. As you push one, they all kind of come together, but there is also a sequence to it. And the path starts with right view. The initial version of right view is that what we do matters, right? Our actions have effects. When we act in ways that are kind and harmonious and generous, we cultivate positive qualities in the mind. We tend to be a benefit to the environment around us, which we then appreciate. It feels good to be in an environment where people are generating those qualities. And the opposite is true. From this understanding that how we act in a way creates our internal and external world, or heavily influences it, maybe is a better way to put that, the intention naturally arises to do more of that. And that'll be where we'll zoom in tonight, on the way the mind starts to take that realization and formulate it into a way of living, and then act on it almost naturally. Once the mind has done that, or as the mind is doing that, it starts to manifest in our speech. So that's the third path factor, right speech. Our actions, the fourth path factor. And our livelihood, the fifth, how we work, how we meet the needs of this body and the people who depend on us, right? And then the path shifts a little. And the sixth path factor is this idea that so much of this work originates in the mind, as we'll talk about tonight, that there's a certain way in which we actually always have to be cognizant of the mind. We can't just say, I'm going to practice right speech. We have to watch the mind throughout the day to make sure that it's ready to say things that are kind and generous and appropriate. And as we realize this, we realize actually there's this sort of steady, consistent effort needed for the whole path to work. That's why at the end of the meditation today, I said, I invited you to keep that light attention on the breath. You can even do it now as you listen to me. You can be aware of your breathing and me talking. The mind can do this. You don't need a lot of attention on the breath, very little. And that little attention on the breath, that little bit of curiosity about your mind state, it's enough to really cultivate the mind in a powerful way, right? To bring these right intentions to fruition. So that's right effort, to do it all day. And then the two pieces that follow are right mindfulness. So checking in, what is the state of this mind right now? and right collectedness, which is that centering around the breath. So there's the last three steps right there. Right effort, right mindfulness, right collectedness. And then there's a little twist, which I haven't talked about much in this series, but I'm going to introduce tonight. For a while, you can go around the path and just have it reinforce itself. The clearer your mind becomes, the more you can discern wholesome actions from unwholesome ones. But after a while, even with a deep, dedicated practice, you will realize that life is inherently painful and that things keep crumbling and hurting. And that even the best trained mind may eventually get dementia or Alzheimer's, right? Or a stroke, right? So there is no cultivating a permanently peaceful mind. But what the mind can realize is that there is a vast peace that's holding all of this, right? This is the difference between good karma and nibbana, right? That all of this is being held in something that is vast and loving and already complete and okay, right? And the Buddha called that the supramundane right view. The first view that your actions matter, that's mundane right view, which is great. If that's all you do, it's a worthy goal for a lifetime. But the completion of this process is to realize that there's something that's been here all along. So let's zoom in. So right intention, the second path factor, sometimes translated as right thought, sometimes translated as right intention. And I actually think it helps to consider both of those words. The active thinking part of this factor is contemplating, right? What you're doing right now, probably, or what you might do when you leave here for 20 seconds before somebody cuts you off at the light on River Road. But it's cogitating. Does this make sense? Can I test this out? You know, Buddhism, one of the things I appreciate about a lot of the ways that Buddhism sort of manifests is that it's a spiritual practice that invites poking and prodding and asking questions and back and forth, right? It's engaged. And so you're encouraged to do that. Test this stuff out intellectually in your life. But then the other aspect of this, right? It's right intention, but it's right thought, but it's also right intention. There's a way as you cogitate these things, as you know them to be true, you act on them almost naturally, right? The mind becomes oriented in that direction. You don't have to think in every moment, say the right thing, say the nice thing, say the appropriate thing. That intention just comes out because you've seen it, you've thought about it, you know what it feels like, right? And so you're aimed in that direction. And in that way, it's like anything else. When you're first learning a sport or how to dance or how to write a legal brief, right? There's probably a way in which you really have to think about the process. And then as you become more developed in it, the mind can do these things because it just knows how. Those intentions arise organically. So this second path factor has both those pieces in it, right? The active thinking and the natural arising. And not to belabor the point, but the Buddha was big on emphasizing that everything starts in the mind. So the trajectory of your life in some ways starts with the quality of the mind from which your actions arise. And the Buddha put it like this in the opening lines of the Dhammapada, which is a collection of verses or poetic language attributed to the Buddha. It's a great read. very short. It's a good one to keep in your pocket. And the opening lines are, all phenomena are preceded by the mind, created by the mind, and have the mind as their master. If one speaks or acts from a corrupted mind, suffering follows as the cartwheel follows the ox's foot. And the next stanza, all phenomena are preceded by the mind, created by the mind, and have the mind as their master. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows as an ever-present shadow. Tara Brock, who used to teach this Wednesday night class, and a beloved teacher, at least to me, a lot of other people I know, she likes to put it this way. She says, karma rests on the tip of intention. Maureen, who usually runs these Wednesday night groups along with Neil, helps get them set up. She's a botanist, and we were talking about in botany, there's this concept of the apical meristem. It's the little part of a plant that can produce all these different kinds of cells that then become the whole plant. It's the growing edge, right? And that's intention. It's the apical meristem of your life. So what did the Buddha say was right intention? Let's get down to brass tacks, right? 3 qualities. There are 3 things that if they arise in the mind, either as contemplations or as what you're going to do, they're going to point you in the right direction, right? They're going to generate those positive reverberations inside and out of you. And we're going to explore all 3 of them. The first one is often defined as renunciation. And that's kind of, somebody told me recently, that's a heavy word, Devin. It's intense. So another way to translate it is it's letting go or simplifying. It's the opposite of greed. It's saying, I don't need to grab on to more of this than I need. Right? I don't need to overdo it. I don't need to squeeze more out of life than it's offering me. Right? Meet my needs, take care of myself, take care of the people around me, right? Tend to my garden, and then relax. When I talk about renunciation, people get a little bit touchy sometimes. In some ways, this is the part of the Dharma teachings that are the least congruent with our sort of Western orientation. And they, people say, well, I don't want to live like a monk. I don't know if Buddhism's for me. But that's not what it's about, right? The Buddha really is offering you a hypothesis that you will actually feel better if you do this, right? I'm not offering it because I want you to feel worse, right? And I don't think the Buddha was either. There's a way in which this letting go once we have enough feels great, right? It's less stress. It's less to worry about. I might phrase it like this way, some suppositions. Take them as you will. It could be freeing not to be obsessed with food and eating out and making gourmet meals. It could be freeing not to be obsessed with clothing. It could be freeing not to be obsessed with finding and collecting music or movies or sneakers. It could be freeing not to be controlled or bothered by one's libido. It could be freeing not to need to have a consistently new, fancy, updated living space. It could be freeing not to have to obsess over one's looks, the shape of one's body, the way one's body is aging. Right? This is the idea of renunciation. Maybe I'd be a little happier if I relaxed some on these things. And so my invitation to you first is that contemplation part. Put this to the test, think about it, grill it, try it out, and see. See if it feels good. So that's the first aspect of right intention. And just for the record, wrong intention would be greed. I think you get the point. Aspect number 2, non-harming. In some ways, it's the counterweight, right, to renunciation. If renunciation keeps us from the tangles of pleasure, non-harming keeps us from the pain of neglect and abuse, right? One of the core understandings in Buddhist teachings is that violence hurts not just the person who's the object of violence, but the subject of the violence, the person who is perpetrating the violence. You harm yourself. So we want to move through the world without hurting ourselves and others, right? That's abuse. And so we want this intention to arise throughout the day. How can I move through this day without hurting people? Not necessarily without making people feel uncomfortable emotions. That's part of life, but without hurting them, right? And the corollary to this, and it doesn't get talked about explicitly in the teachings, but it's all over them. The other way of harming is neglect, right? There's abuse and neglect. And neglect is the harm of not paying enough attention, not tending to what needs tending to, not being vigilant and diligent, right? And so sometimes when I talk about renunciation, people are like, well, if I let everything go, I'll, be a slob with a dirty house and there will be mice and cockroaches and the things won't get fixed. No, this is not, the caricature of Baloo in the Jungle Book, right? Diligence is welcome. Taking care of the people, who need to be taken care of is important, right? I got to wash all the different parts of my kids' bodies at night when I give them baths, right? That's good, mindful attention. It's okay to groom, right? And to take care of the body. But there's that fine line between tending to something and obsessing over it, right? And the Dharma kind of invites you to find that sweet spot. So that's piece number 2, non-harming. And then piece number 3, non-ill will. And that can seem like, well, isn't that the same as non-harming? But it's not. Non-ill will is the quality of one's heart-mind, right? You could think, okay, I'm not chasing pleasure, I'm not hurting anyone, good karma, all done. But you could still be kind of miserable on the inside. Less miserable than you would be if you were living hedonistically and hurting people. But there's this other quality where the mind could still be tight or resentful or bitter or sour, right? I think of people I know who are sort of chaste and pious, but not happy, right? It's sort of that rigid rule-following mentality, but they wear it like a prison, right? And the Buddha, I think, saw this and really wanted to invite people to understand that the last piece is a quality of a warm heart, a compassionate heart, a dynamic heart. For those of you who are familiar with the divine abodes, compassion, equanimity, joy for others, and loving kindness, this is where they fit into the path. Cultivating care for yourself and others, it goes right here. Any thoughts, any actions that create that love from human to human, they're important. Generosity, right? Kind words, hugs. That's where all of this comes in. And from this one, we could sort of think of those same kind of invitations. Wouldn't it be liberating not to hate anyone anymore? Wouldn't it be liberating to be free of bitterness or resentment? Wouldn't it be liberating to be compassionate in the face of suffering instead of vengeful? Wouldn't it be liberating to be clear-eyed and steady in the face of chaos and violence instead of greedy and clinging and shut down? Wouldn't it be nice to radiate warmth and love? And wouldn't it be incredibly freeing to wish the best for humanity all the time, to just wish the best for people? So these three aspects are right intention. If you wake up in the morning, right, and the mind sort of cogitates and says, today I want to let go of what can be let go of, not abuse anybody, not neglect anything, and cultivate a warm and compassionate heart, you have aimed yourself, according to the Buddha's hypothesis, in exactly the right direction. And the more you think on it, and the more you do it, the more it starts to happen naturally. I looked up yesterday as I was loading the kids in the minivan, and I said, guys, not a single person yelled at anybody else this morning. That's amazing. And I've been, ever since the work rules for the federal government got rejiggered, I have been what the kids call morning dad. So from 6:15 when they get up to 9 something when we finally get out the door, I'm on. My wife has to leave very early to get to work. And, you know, I'd say in the beginning there was a lot of yelling, right? But over now 13 months, we've pretty much smoothed it out, right? And that's that right intention. It's a gentle shaping, right? Each person in that family system, I think I played the largest role, right? Had to figure out how to hold those three qualities. What could we let go of in that routine that we didn't need to hold on to, right? If I try to do too much, if I try to play all the games with them, then I don't get stuff ready in time, right? So that's the renunciation piece. Can I pay attention to can I remember everything that goes in the lunches? Get all the mittens and the gloves and the hats. I have 3 small children, so it's like, it's a lot of little pieces, and that kid likes cucumbers and that kid likes carrots, right? So not neglecting, not abusing, not yelling at them, right? If I don't give myself enough time, I flip out and I say something mean or I shout. Then they're hurt. My son said, Dad, it feels like you cut me on the inside when you talk to me like that. Ouch, right? He's articulate. Right? So non-abuse. And then the last one, that warm radiance, right? Can we actually, more than just sort of mechanically marching through, can we really love and enjoy each other and care about each other? Can we move towards the kid who's feeling bad, right? And bringing it all full circle, we won't keep getting it perfect every morning, right? And even if we could, we would still have some really hard mornings ahead of us, right? There are going to be mornings where we're feeling sad or lost or scared or confused, right? Or somebody's stuck in some mental pattern that they don't quite know how to get out of, right? And they're reactive, and the rest of us are doing our best to manage that. And so the completion of the Dharma, right? There's this moment in the text where the monks would say, what needed to be done has been done. The spiritual life is being lived. There's no more coming back to any state of being. It's like the stock quote you'll read over and over again. To get there, there's a deeper sense of letting go with our obsession to make life perfect, right? Trying to win the game of life, right? We rest in our radiant heart. We do our best to just love and care. We continue to cultivate these three intentions, but we also just know that there's something bigger that's holding it all. And when that realization really sinks into your bones, then you're free.